But yeah, we are seeing similar patterns. I do think it's interesting. Yeah, EHEX, you can make an argument for incentive token too. I think that, and somebody said about Pulse like being one of the better ones to DCA into. I mean, yeah, it's probably looked the weakest compared to some of these other ones. Like certainly it's weakened against Hex, Pulse X over the last few weeks. So yeah, even though it seems like the boring thing maybe to just buy Pulse, I think that that's an interesting comment. I forget who it was that said that. But to look at like what a couple people are saying in terms of, yeah, so here was NJ Dub. So coin to be buying is either Pulse or EHEX relative to all the RH tickers. Both are less than 100% up from their all-time lows. Other three are still up a lot. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting way to do it. And maybe we can just like get into the overall idea of how to DCA in and get to the main topic since we're looking at the charts anyway. Because this conversation right here and what he is saying is a little bit different from what I would say if like you were not even exposed to the ecosystem in DCAing. So
right,
looking at this first, I wanted to ask you this, Ewok, because I always kind of don't trust myself to do this. But like, for example, he's saying like, hey, these look like the definite weakest tokens. If I have new money coming in right now, these are the ones I'm going to get into at the moment. And maybe for the foreseeable future, that's what I'm going to DCA into, assuming all other things equal, I guess, like assuming that you are comfortable with your allocation otherwise.
So here's something really cool on Go Pulse. If, it's got the 5-minute frame, it's got the, 1 hour, 6 hour, 24, but it also has the all-time low. It's a neat tool to use as a reference guide of kind of what he's saying. So, you look at Pulse and it's only up 48%, 41.8% from its all-time low. You got incentive up almost 400%. You got Pulse X up almost, 192. The two low ones though are Pulse and Hex at this point. Now, it doesn't measure the EHEX, but you can pull the chart up and take a look at it. But this is a good reference point too for the PulseChain stuff. To take a look at and see if it's an easy way to look. Well, where are we at from the all-time low? What hasn't grown as much as the others, and this is just a nice quick reference tool for that. So I didn't know if people were aware of that all-time low button or not, but it's there.
That is good. And I think in terms of EHEX, it's probably worthwhile just to look at it ratio-wise compared to Hex, maybe. I think maybe, it's a little bit different, obviously. If you're looking at its percentage from all-time low, it's going to be a bit different from these other tokens since it's a cycle in.
Yeah.
But yeah, that ratio is certainly interesting as well.
Well, yeah. And if you're looking at the all-time low, obviously it was, it's still up crazy from there because it was 4.05655 was the all-time low for that.
Right.
So
to kind of go on that point though, from NJ Dub, like, have you ever been one to like look at, and of course, prior to PulseChain being around, there was really just Hex. But if you're ever like involved in an ecosystem or looking at this right now, would you ever take this kind of approach and say like, okay, well, I'm pretty much equal everywhere else. I'm for the foreseeable future until things turn around, I'm going to ape into like this stuff only? Or are you more somebody who's like, no, I'm just always going to spread it around because, even though these things move in tandem, the ratios still do change. So I just want to be safe and accumulate everything. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's a good, everybody's theory is going to be a little bit different. It's what works for you. It's how much of a bag of whatever are you already holding, and do you want more of something else that you may not have? That plays a part as well. I mentioned it to you just from providing liquidity with the Pulse X pair, because it's grown from the time I invested. I've lost some Pulse X. Now I plan on holding it through. Unless the ratio gets ridiculously crazy, then, I don't know what I'll do. But in the meantime, when I'm DCAing, I'm trying to make up some of what I've lost, essentially.
Right.
And I'm not even selling the incentive to do it. I'm trying to put fresh capital in to, get a little bit of that position back. I don't mind earning the incentive because I think it's going to go up as well. So just trying to capture some of the position that I've lost by providing liquidity that way. And, I made a buy earlier today, in fact, so got a little bit more Pulse X to make up for, just the impermanent loss that I've experienced. So I think everybody's everybody's method to their madness is a little different. But it's a good one. You know, if you think something is still on sale and you want to grab it, it makes complete sense, because I do think they're all going to go up together. As the water rises, so do all the ships. So
Yeah, and as you say, it's really up to your situation. Like whenever, shortly after the fork and whenever Pulse Chain actually went live, like many people, like I wanted to for months, I was really concerned with filling up Pulse and Pulse X bags because, a lot of us already had Hex. Obviously, you get the copies over there. Maybe you didn't sacrifice as much for those two tokens, or you did and it just went down only, so you wanted to buy
right,
more, obviously. So
sure,
yeah, so for a while for me it was all about Pulse and Pulse X, but yeah, now I'm basically at the place where you top those bags off enough and you get to a place where you feel pretty even across. I've honestly just been DCing into everything, including ink, pretty much equally lately. But I do understand, looking at the charts, seeing where we're at ratio wise and stuff. And again, you just mentioned it too. You do have to take into account for us, like providing liquidity. You want to make sure, like you're buying Pulse X because you've lost so much Pulse X and stuff like that. But even if you didn't do that, I mean, even if you were just DCing equally into Pulse and Pulse X
right.
while doing that, you're still kind of getting it back, obviously, anything that you've lost. So
Yeah. So I want to address this. OG Hexagons who sacked Hex are dumping their previous gains they made from Hex in Pulse, since the liquidity is there. Minus 50% down from 1,000x is still a 500x profit to sell. And then he goes on to say OG Hex whales have unlimited ammunition to dump. Well, if we're going to see OG Hex whales do any dumping, I think now's the time. What you may not realize is the more they dump now, the less they have to dump when it does take off and runs to the moon. So, yeah, I mean, there are whales that are doing it, but I don't see a whole lot. I don't see a whale lot of whales. I mean, most of them are fairly benevolent. I think there may be a couple sharks that are, and maybe your terminology by whale didn't mean the rank, but I see some dolphins and some sharks that are doing the dumping, who probably retired way too early. And now they have to kind of live on the crypto instead of still continuing to just hold through these down times. So I think that has happened a lot, and we have lost quite a few sharks that have become dolphins and dolphins that have become squids due to that. So again, let's let them dump at these levels. I don't see anything wrong with it. Eventually, it's kind of what happened to Bitcoin early too. The fewer and fewer that have that many are, the fewer that can hurt the price later. So not a bad thing.
And then, yeah, and that's an interesting comment. And again, yeah, them selling low down here is better than anything else. And luckily, we haven't seen any kind of like epic sells in quite some time. Like the last one that comes to my mind was that, not to dox him, but I mean, it's already known, that Nick Cherry one from like way back. I don't even remember when that was. Yeah.
Yeah. I forget how many millions he dumped, but it was quite a few.
That was like late spring, beginning of summer, because we had gotten off, we were near sack rate and came the whole way back down to like 4 zeros and a 6 or something like that. But
yep.